All right, let's get started here. People are dropping in where they're from. Got some folks from UVA and Hunter and Colgate. Very good, very good. St. John's, wonderful. Some Long Islanders in here. Pennsylvanians, Rhode Islanders, University of Texas. Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. Keep chatting, telling us where you're from. Hopefully we'll get a chance to connect after the event. So real quick, my name is Tariq Pertu. I'm going to give a quick background just to create some relevance around why I'm even doing this, why I'm here in the first place. So I am the co-founder and chief creative officer of a company based out of New York, although we've been fully remote for a long time, called Uncubed. We are often referred to as Uncubed Media Bistro because we purchased a company called Media Bistro last year, which is for anyone that has students that graduate in media studies and such would be very familiar with that, since it is the kind of the official media job board, if you will. In a previous life, I had started a business called My Workster that I had resigned from in 2011 before starting Uncubed, and that's where I really cut my teeth on working most directly with universities, except it was typically with alumni associations where we were helping alumni find new career opportunities. That really hatched out of the recession, when a lot of alumni were out of a job for the first time in their postgraduate lives, and they were coming back to the school for support. And so then Uncubed kind of rallied multiple schools to do these multi-school alumni job fairs and such. Then went off, started Uncubed. Uncubed has trafficked mostly with startups and innovative companies. That's been broadened over the years as we've grown and as more and more companies have more of a modern and innovative approach to work. We have an agency where we produce a lot of really exciting video work, basically employer branding work, what the industry calls employer branding work. It's essentially a way for companies to market exactly what's happening with their company so that candidates can get a better idea of what life might be like there, right? Choosing a career is such a major life decision. I don't think that's fully appreciated among students. I certainly didn't fully appreciate it. The idea that you might take your first job and be in that industry for the rest of your life. We don't fully appreciate just how significant that decision is. And so being really thoughtful about it is important. And one way to be thoughtful about it is to learn as much as you can about a company you might join. It's one of the major life decisions that we all make that still comes without a lot of context, if you really think about it. Even the decision of coming to UVA, which is where I graduated in 2004, I toured the school as an example and got to really know it, to know that was a good fit. You don't typically do that with a job unless you have a killer internship. So anyway, we have the studio, which does that. And then we have kind of the recruiting side of the business, which just helps connect talent to companies. And recently we've focused almost all of our efforts, and going forward, all of our efforts will be on early professionals. And so what came with that was more and more content that would be useful to students. We launched an 8-minute webinar series where we interview companies like Facebook, Google, Peloton, iHeartMedia for 8 minutes, just to tell us what the process is for students, so that students can just develop more fluency around the application process. Doesn't make students smarter, but it makes them better, test takers, if you will. And David Lipinski, who is joining us here, and he'll introduce himself, and then Carl, you'll jump in as well. David and I have been friends for quite some time. He leads employer relations and also builds out special educational projects, which we'll go into a little bit here at University of Virginia. I have served as an advisor, mostly focusing on my knowledge of what startups are looking for the career service office at UVA. And then recently, David and I have been collaborating on a multi-school STEM job fair for the class of 2020, and then just constantly thinking of other ways to help. Pretty much whenever I ask David for support, he says yes, despite his insanely busy schedule. And recently he shared this Propel program that he developed with in record time, really, to help mostly the class of 2020 and others, but have a real meaningful career experience in light of the changing economic landscape. And I just basically asked him if he would jump on and just share how he did it, so that others that are on could maybe actually implement this. And for those of you that are listening, I think it goes without saying that if you can change the life of a single person, you would probably take the time to do it. But there's obviously a chance to change the lives of so many people. And I really do believe that thinking creatively and building out programs like Propel, especially now that we're able to do things in a more agile manner, could really change people's lives for the better. And so hopefully what we get out of this are that students will we'll actually implement something similar. So David, do you want to just introduce yourself, maybe a little bit of your own background, where you're from, and then Carl do the same. And then I'll kind of kick us off with an intro question just to get us the high level of Propel, and then we'll dig into some more details. Folks, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask, and then I'll be monitoring that so that I can ask David as well.
Absolutely. Tarek, thank you so much. It's been an honor to work with you over the years. I remember the first time that I attended one of your Uncubed programs. It's always been just incredibly impressive in terms of your just knowledge of the industry and the connection to what students need. So as Tarek mentioned, my name is David Lipinski. I am the Director of Employer Relations and Experiential Learning. I've been here at UVA for about 6 years. I've been in career services, I guess going on maybe 12 or 13 years, but before that, my background was in management consulting, mainly with Ernst & Young and Capgemini Ernst & Young, which was the group that acquired Ernst & Young's consulting arm back then. But I came into the field for experiences like these because they are opportunities to really create a meaningful experience for students. I was fortunate that when I was an undergrad many years ago, I had fortunate opportunities to engage in transformative opportunities that taught me a lot about myself. And that's one of the reasons I came back into the field, or wanted to do something in the field and lead consulting. I guess, I do want to apologize for having the hat on today, but I guess this is kind of like the new business professional for me now, because I'm trying to get a haircut. I have not been able to get one, but you can see me without this thing on. So, I'm growing the mullet,
Yep. Yeah. Mullet looks good. No, it looks good. I can't believe you didn't comment on that killer beard you're growing also.
Yeah, the beard. This is kind of like everybody can look at this is pre-COVID. Okay, so I hope that there's some.
I did think that maybe someone Zoom bombed our call, but it was just you.
That was me. People say that picture goes back. But no, I'm honored to be here and share a bit about the program. As we get into the program, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this program was turned around in such a quick turnaround. It's because of our team. We are fortunate that we have such an awesome team in the UVA Career Center that is nimble, that is understands when things change. We adapt and we provide opportunities for students. I saw Laura Del Prado, who's on the line. Courtney Harris, Becca Hyatt. This program would not be possible, and then our Vice President, Everett Fortner, who allows these types of opportunities for us to risk and take chances on these types of opportunities, because we are kind of very agile. We take chances. Things work sometimes, they don't other times, and we've been fortunate this time.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. That's a really good point. It's probably very hard for higher education to mobilize so quickly, and it does require people that would obviously champion that cause. So thanks to everyone that did do that.
Yeah, and then we've got Carl, Carl Spana, one of our third-year students that's participating in the program. Say hey, introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah. I'm Carl Spana. I'm a rising third-year computer science major and probably a microeconomics minor. I've always been interested in consulting, and when I saw that UVA had this program, I pretty much jumped right at it. I love it so far. I think it's great. I love the real-world experience, and I hope I can, share some more about it as we go through the session.
And your hometown's Westchester, is that right?
Yeah, specifically Harrison. I don't know. I see some people in New York in the chat. I don't know if anyone knows where that is. So that's where I live.
Got it. Cool. Thanks. All right, cool. David, why don't the conversation you and I had was pretty high level, but I think it was super useful, which is maybe just help everybody understand what this program is, and then we'll take a step back around how the idea surfaced in the first place and how you all thought that this was something you could execute on. We'll go into, did you have meetings with people to decide a bunch of different ideas, and this is the one that surfaced to the top? But maybe just start with exactly what the program is, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty about how to develop it and how you developed it and how others can develop it.
Absolutely. And I'll fast forward to kind of like if there's a slide that I feel like is relevant, and then we can just kind of use the Q&A.
Perfect.
Thanks, Tarek. Essentially this is a 10-week, program that we created that is designed for all students, rising second, third, fourth, but it is a project-based learning program with a micro-internship component where students participate in live problems from companies and organizations. These are in a wide variety of areas. These are just examples that we included: market research, marketing strategy, digital transformation, e-commerce, but real problems from real organizations. Students are grouped in 5-person teams to tackle these problems, and then they are engaged against up to 10 other teams. So it's like kind of like a quasi, case competition, but with real world problems, and real students working on these with real coaches, real mentors, with an idea to replace what was needed in terms of these lost internships from students. Students work on these for 2 full weeks with their mentors and coaches helping them out, and then they lead up to a capstone presentation at the end. It's a partnership with it's us coordinating through the Career Center, but partnering with the businesses, partnering with the Small Business Development Center that's in the Charlottesville area, partnering with economic development, and partnering with our local incubators, really to make this possible for the organizations and for the students as part of it. I can dig in deeper, Tarek, if you want.
No, that's good. Let's start there. And so let's go back. So when COVID hit, it was obvious that students were losing opportunities. You had told me that, and everyone was very reactionary to new information. It started as employers still feeling quite optimistic. Okay, this thing will pass. Everything's holding true. Then it went to actually, we're going to cut back on the number of students that we plan on bringing on. The third level was we're actually going to rescind offers. And then kind of the nail in the coffin, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, was that as far as the class of 2020 in specific is concerned, that many companies are going to just completely pause college recruiting until things get back to normal, and then they'll just start from scratch with whatever class is next up, if you will, which then leaves certain classes, certainly the class of 2020, maybe even the class of 2021, in a little bit of a challenge. So there needs to be something done. I think one thing that I'm hoping looks so many higher ed professionals are going to be in a tough situation right now, because you're going to have to manage a completely new world for the class of 2021 who are still there. So that's not just focusing on students that are there with less resources. You have to do more with less resources, and then somehow see if there's anything that could be done to continue to support the class of 2020. And it's not easy. So I think if we can find more ways of creating examples like this, schools probably want to digest that and figure out how to activate it quickly, but maybe just take a step back and walk us through what was going through your team's mind that even allowed this to surface to begin with. Did you have a brainstorming session on ways to help students? Did you already have a program like this in place? Had you been considering it and you thought this is the perfect time to deploy it?
That's a great question. Yeah, and it's a great starting point. When COVID came and COVID hit, one of our first things were to start looking at the data and understand where were we seeing the change, for students. We were quickly seeing that within the data that was, coming in through our Handshake platform, is that we were seeing a decline in opportunities for the students. So our first instinct was, let's just look at the data. So we actually saw initially the data was saying is that there's a significant decline in internship opportunities, but we didn't see a significant impact yet on full-time. So we said, since we're seeing the impact at the internship level, what can we do to respond? And again, our first instinct was to source more internships, right? Can we go find more individual internships? And if everybody knows the parable of the starfish, when the starfish are all washed up on the beach, and there's the person that's out walking the beach one by one, throwing the starfish into the water, to save the starfish. And then the little boy walks up to the woman, and says, there's no way you're going to save all these starfish. And she's like, well, I saved that one, right? So for each starfish, she was able to help, but the thing is as we were trying the internship model, it was the starfish model. One by one, we were trying to throw them, you were trying to identify opportunities, but it wasn't a solution that was scalable. We knew that we had a problem, and the problem wasn't just a number of students that were struggling for it was hundreds, if not thousands of students that were struggling for some type of summer opportunity to replace their experience. They were struggling. Not only did they not have an internship experience, they didn't even have an opportunity to work a job that they would have normally had. Could have been camp counselor. It could have been bartending. They could have been waiting tables. So what we did is we came together as a group and started brainstorming what we could do, what could we do that was scalable, what could we do that we looked at these design criteria is something that really replaced the internship experience that was hands-on, immersive. And we were fortunate that we already had a mindset at UVA around what we call life-transforming programs. That mindset really tries to identify programs and opportunities that are experiential, hands-on, immersive, offer reflection, engage mentors, you know, and so we had the mindset there for it already. So when we said, let's pivot and let's identify an opportunity to create a program to support the students, quickly we came up with this idea of what we call Propel, you know, as part of it. So we were able to be nimble because we were already we were already in the mindset of supporting students in this area.
Okay, and then walk us through what the steps were for getting this off the ground, from reaching out to the, you know, obviously the local business association, and maybe give us an idea of the time frame. So this would be great. Just tell us kind of how, from that moment, what the next steps were for actually getting this off the ground, and what and how and the total timetable to make it happen.
Looking back, you know, it was right about you know, mid-March when we knew we were shutting down operations, you know, on grounds. You know, within that, it might have been, you know, within a week or two, late March, that we were starting to look at options, you know, based off our data. So we started to, our first conversations were, you know, we had a concept. The concept was, okay, we realized, you know, we don't have the financial means, you know, really to, you know, to pull this off. Are there organizations that would be supported? So our first conversations were with some of our company partners like Accenture, and, you know, organizations like McKinsey. And we said, if we were to build this program that were to be something that was experiential, originally we were going to partner with an organization called MindSumo. If everybody's familiar with, you know, MindSumo as a project-based, you know, program where students can compete, and we were going to put the MindSumo projects in front of students, and then we were going to do that together with the support of coaches and mentors. So that was the original idea we started to pitch to McKinsey and Accenture. And we said, just out of curiosity, do you think, as you guys are scaling back your operations on your internships, would you have the alumni to support as coaches? Would you have the resources to support? They all came back with an affirmative. They said, absolutely, we're seeing the decline, we want to help. That was the first buy-in that we needed. So then we started to really kind of put pen to paper, you know, and this is late March, you know, in terms of what the concept was, drafted out the concept, and then we started saying, you know what, there's more of we need more real world problems. You know, MindSumo projects are an opportunity, but can we find real world projects? And that's when we reached out to the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center. We were hearing in the news that right about that time at the beginning of April, who was really hurting the most? Who was hurting the most were small businesses. It wasn't the big Amazons, it wasn't the Walmarts, it was the small businesses that were having to shut their doors and really kind of that needed help. So in the conversation, we started to say, do you have any projects that would be of interest working with the Small Business Development Center and our local economic development office? And then through that, we facilitated connections with the local counties. Once we started to engage with the local counties, we really started to, and this is now getting into probably the, you know, we're in the first week of April at this time, you know, as part of it. And we realized that there is a struggle for these organizations that are the small businesses in these rural counties. We knew we had an opportunity. We had students that could help. We had organizations in need, you know, as part of it. And from there, that's where the bridge really started to create. And we started to say, if we can really form structured business problems, we can get the students to work on these and deliver actionable solutions that can actually make a difference, you know, for these groups. So we took a step back, built that out, and the next thing you know, the counties, I remember one of my first conversations with Fluvanna County. I did the pitch to them, wasn't sure how it was going to go. We were talking about the idea, and at the end of it, I was there alongside the representative from the Central Virginia Small Business Development. On the other side on the Zoom was someone from our Economic Development Office, and I asked the Economic Development Director from Fluvanna County, I said, are you interested? And they said, absolutely. A, you had me at the word free. You know, which was very helpful. And he says, B, he goes, it's not like you're bringing toxic waste to my county. He goes, this is a solution that we need. We don't need toxic waste, and we need to decide this idea, and this is incredibly helpful. So that's where it really started. And we said, you know, if we've got these ideas that can support the counties, How can we now move that to small businesses? So then our conversation went beyond the counties, and we started talking with the incubators, that are working with the small businesses, or sorry, the startup companies, and we started having similar conversations to build out the projects. Next thing you know, we realized it started just to snowball to start going. We realized we have something here that is has an opportunity to support these organizations, support the students, and honestly, it's even kind of like building into where there's opportunity for post-project implementation work. So we're concurrently working on, for those that might be from the Commonwealth of Virginia, what it's called Go Virginia funding. Go Virginia funding is to actually take the concepts that these students work on. What we're going to do is we're going to staff up micro-internship teams. They're going to be supportive of it. And then we're pursuing implementation funding for the ideas that we're actually developing for the companies.
A couple of relevant questions. First one is, do students get any type of credit for participation?
There's no credit. It's which is good.
Right. It's the more, no, and we get it. I mean, I think it was just a question, but I think especially because it would also apply to graduates in class of 2020, and it's much more of a investing in your career model than anything else. It's you do this, you're going to obviously have the type of learning that maybe others wouldn't get. And then, okay, good. So, and then give me two quick questions. One is, how big is like your implementation team in terms of the people that actually sourced the projects, got them on paper somehow, launched the website? How big, for people listening, I mean, how if they're going to mobilize around this, how big should they, how much effort, just an idea of how many people might need help?
We're using, pieces of 4 team members, really, on this, that, again, everybody has other responsibilities that they're managing. So, and they're working, a lot of hours, on this, but really 4 team members, someone working very closely with our mentors and coaches that are coming from the firms, because that's a number that exceeds 75 unique alumni coaches that are supporting these projects. We have, a team member that's Laura, that's very focused on just the management and the logistics, all the moving parts. And that's actually, and also a lot of it's the student reflection. There's the learning outcomes. It's, we really want this is not just, let's just throw the students at a project and see what sticks at the end. We want to make sure that the students are learning through their experience, and that there's a component of reflection. There's a component of self-discovery at the end, that they can actually then tell their story and say, you know what, this is what I liked and I didn't like, about this experience. And so we're being very intentional about that piece of it. There's the ongoing communications, with the company partners, which is an important task, that's being taken care of. And then there's just the ongoing communication with the students, just to make sure. We have to manage a collab environment that has all of the resources that help educate the students on the topics that we're working on, but also ensure that the students are in communication, because many of these students haven't worked together before. They're being placed on teams and are thousands of miles apart or hundreds of miles apart, right? Only attached by Zoom. So that in itself is, and Carlos will share some experiences on as a student going through this, is an important piece of being able to manage, because otherwise you would see a lot of attrition from this program. And that's one of the things that we don't want to see. We don't want to see students sign up, start the projects, and then not complete. And by having all the touch points around them and to the safety, it's really making sure that we're getting 100% completion.
And then what tools are you using to manage everything? Is it like a Google Doc situation, or do you, again, I'm asking pretty detailed questions because I'm hoping people can imagine in their head kicking this thing off tomorrow.
Absolutely. So our university platform for managing classes is Collab. And that is our main communication, how we communicate to the students. It's how we manage the resources.
And every time, and then are you all like, once you got all these different, and then when you were working closely with the companies, were you asking them essentially, what's your biggest challenge? Give us your top 3 challenges. And then you were presenting them for students to work on, or did you curate the challenges and then decide?
Yeah, it's a series of meetings, of trying to really kind of understand their challenges and to make sure that it's a challenge that has a workable solution. Something that is not going to be overly intimidating to the students or a waste of time for them, and also there's a lot of criteria. There's supporting information, supporting data, that supports the problem. Sometimes you might talk to a startup company that is too early stage, that they just don't have enough information, and the students could really spend a lot of time spinning, their wheels.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of criteria that we just walk through with the organization, where we understand what the problem is, what's the expected deliverable, that the students can work on, to work towards, and, what can they provide in terms of support. And that's one of the other pieces that was very important, is that any partner, it's either one of the counties or if it's one of the organizations we partner with, has a level of support that they have to provide, meaning that they just don't hand over the project and then show up 2 weeks later for a capstone presentation. They have to be engaged with the organization to participate in discovery calls, focus groups, so the students can get the information just like it's a real client.
Got it. And then lastly, and then I'm going to jump to Carl to explain his experience thus far. Are there any labor laws in particular that you had to research that would allow students to do this in such a new, because it's such a new model that doesn't really make sense necessarily, certainly during a pandemic for companies that are struggling to pay for. It's not built into an existing system that would allow schools to quickly whip up a credit, kind of a credit program for it. Did you have to navigate that at all?
We didn't. I hope we don't. It definitely hasn't come up.
All right, good. Okay, Carl, walk us through, if you can, how you learned about it. I know you just shared via the chat that you saw it via email. Why you decided to do it. You shared a little bit of that earlier, but just walk us through kind of to where you are now. I think you're about to present a capstone tomorrow, maybe. What made you sign up, what project you were tasked with, the company that you're helping, what work you had to do, and then what the capstone is about. Can you walk us through that, soup to nuts?
Yeah, definitely. So I explained in the chat a little bit. I'm sure people have read that, but I had some internships going on and all kind of just got washed away, since New York was hit really hard. So I guess everyone had to cancel. But thank you, Laura. So I got the email and it was like a blessing pretty much. I knew I needed the experience and I was really grateful to have the opportunity. So I pretty much signed up the same day. And actually I was waitlisted originally and kind of got in after some people dropped out. The main reason I joined is because I know that getting this early experience is very valuable. And I didn't really want to deliver burgers for Bear Burger over the summer. So I figured, getting some real work experience was probably more valuable. In terms of, I guess, meeting the group and, talking to clients, it all went pretty smoothly. I thought, David and Laura especially were so great over email. I had emailed them asking to get placed into courses and making sure everything was working right. Any questions, they were so quick to answer. And, we were able to ask questions directly to I wish I had remembered his name, but one of the main guys, I believe his name was Brian, was working on the project, and we could directly ask him questions about, what does the county need? What are they looking for? And that was very helpful in gathering information. We also had a focus group call where we were able to talk to not only consumers, but also business owners to get a better sense of the overall picture. It might be easier to explain more of the specifics than the general process. A lot of it was
definitely
research based. What does this even look like? What does it look like to set up an e-commerce system for a county? As a computer science major, I have a different opinion than people who are in the comm school in my group or mechanical engineer. So, I think it might be a bit easier to explain if anyone has a super specific question.
Yeah, ask any questions if you all have. Give us an idea a little bit of just how you're collaborating with students from, and maybe Dave, you can support a little bit of how you paired students for projects. I guess let's start with Dave Carl, if you don't mind real quick. Was the idea that you wanted different skill sets kind of grouped together? Did you have a number in mind of how many students you wanted to pair together? Are they across different years?
Yeah, one piece, students could come as teams already, and that was one thing when they registered, they could register as a team. If they didn't register as a team, we were very intentional on, in terms of their backgrounds, in terms of majors, trying to make sure that they were interdisciplinary, across the students. Another factor in it was time zones. We track that in terms of it because we have students all across the globe right now. Laura, who's on the line, spent a lot of time making sure that if a student was, from, if they were in Europe or in Asia, they understood what they were getting into, with this, because we've run skill development programs virtually through synchronous environments where students are in China and they've had difficulty, getting online. We made sure that was something that was considered. But there was a lot of time that went in to understand the interdisciplinary background of the student, but then also the time zones so we could determine how to place them.
So did you have these as like questions on the form where people applied? Like, do you have a team? Are there people you'd like to work with?
Yes, yeah, and we did most of our initial registration through Handshake. Through the way the students would register. They could register using the survey feature. They could either put their full team in, or they could just register as an individual. And then in some cases, some of our projects are financial in nature. So therefore, we want to understand the background of the students in terms of their background. So that way, we don't take and put all the students that have all the finance background together on a team. We actually spread them out. Or some of the projects are more focused around analytics. We divide up the students based off of that. So these are all questions that we would incorporate into this survey based off of the projects.
And do you want to walk us through one of these example projects here that you have on the screen?
Well, I pulled this up to kind of help, as Carl was going through. Carl happens to be in Fluvanna County, okay. So this is just, so for everybody that's on the line, this really kind of sets the tone in terms of what a project is, in the example. As we were alluding to, when we were working with the Small Business Development Center and Economic Development, we realized that small businesses in these rural counties around Central Virginia were struggling because they didn't have the technical infrastructure or experience to bring their businesses online. So as we know that if everybody was shutting down and you really couldn't get your business from people just coming up to your front door like they normally were, you needed an online presence, to do that. Many of these small businesses were only using tools like Facebook. So this project was really focused on developing a digital transformation e-commerce strategy and framework to support these small businesses and the county. And it's interesting, as we were coming up with this is exactly what the county was struggling with, because they said, we need some type of solution to work towards. And this is what Carl and his teams and the other teams are competing on.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Folks, if you're listening in and you feel like, like you're dealing with something similar, and maybe just chime in and feel free to connect, because I bet if you're going to start working on things like this, people might want to share some resources. Carl, why don't you just maybe explain a little bit of the detail of how are you actually interacting with the other students in the project? What's the format, and how do you report back on progress?
So we have a group chat, the classic iMessage one, and a Zoom call that we all use. I think we've all kind of realized at this point, I'm sure everybody who's done any work online, Zoom is just the easiest. We have one member of our group who's actually in New Delhi, so I feel a bit bad for him because sometimes we're meeting at 3 a.m. on his time, so he's actually changed his sleep schedule a bit. But for the most part, I think everybody else is East Coast time. Zoom has its own set of challenges. It's always tough to, I like to say read the room when you're talking, because you can't read the room because there is no room. So it's tough to make sure, like, how do I know if I'm talking too much or if I'm talking over someone, or if someone else wants to jump in, I can't easily see that. So I think, as people are getting more used to Zoom, we'll get better at that. And we have as the project went on. But in terms of our tools, Zoom and text were the big ones.
Got it. And then maybe explain in detail who is the point person at the organization that you're helping, Fluvanna in this case. Is it just give us an idea of their profile and how often you're interacting directly with them?
So we interacted with, I think it was the leader of economic development. I'm not 100% sure. We interacted with them in the focus group meetings and the discovery meetings. They kind of set everything up. They told us what we needed, and they made sure that they were readily available if we had any questions. And I think a couple members of our group sent some emails to them and got pretty fast responses. And for the most part, they did a great job explaining it the first time around. Like, as you can see here, this was one of the slides that we got, and it was very easy to tell, like, this is what their problem is, and this is how we can, and this is what we're looking for. How can you get us there? How can you make this happen?
And then tell us finally, and then Dave, I'm going to pass it back to you to maybe go through anything else in the deck that you think is important. But tell us about the capstone that you're about to present. What's that all about?
Sure. So we set up do you want me to talk specifically about what our solution was, or?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Just get us an idea of the solution that you're presenting, and is there a specific format that you had to stick to with the solution, or did you all just have flexibility on how you planned on presenting that?
I felt that we had a lot of flexibility on our idea. What we actually did is, so they talked a lot on e-commerce transformation, and our group, my group interpreted that to mean, improving our online presence, making ourselves more accessible online, as opposed to something more like like the county had mentioned specifically a couple times, like something along the lines of an Amazon for Fluvanna County. We decided to go a slightly different route in the sense that they have a rather small budget, which they could not afford that type of software or to develop it. And we think that time is more important because as places open up, we want to secure customers. So they noticed something interesting and they got more business after the lockdown than before because people couldn't go into Charlottesville and do their shopping. They had to shop local. So we focused on, we're going to update the website, improve some SEO optimization to make sure businesses show up when you search for them on Google. We're just going to mostly, a lot of what I did was looking at modernizing the website, making it more presentable. I think it's kind of a running joke that all government websites look, not that great. So making the page look professional was very important so that people would want to engage in it. We also want to update the newsletter to include like weekly business profiles. So like, that way certain restaurants could always be in the news and that people are reminded of the places where we want them to shop. And then our final phase, so to speak, is a county-wide loyalty program. So we actually managed to get into contact with there's a company called Belly, which does all sorts of online punch cards. And they were able to explain to us that we could actually get the whole county on board so that let's say you shop at 4 or 5 different businesses, you can cash in your reward for shopping in Fluvanna. Like if I buy X amount of items from a woman who sells paintings, then I can use that reward to like go to a bakery and get an item as long as people are spending equally at all different places.
And was there a team lead or leader, someone that had presented this? Did you have, if so, did you just decide that amongst yourselves?
We kind of decided, it just kind of grew out of a lot of the extra coursework we had. So there is a management course that's paired with the Propel course. You don't have to be in Propel to take that course. But the guy who's running that talked a lot about this problem solving solution called mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, which means you look at all possible solutions and make sure that you don't have any overlap. So like the website doesn't overlap with our newsletter and none of those overlap with the loyalty program. So we can target all different areas to try and help out. And these ideas kind of evolved over time. So the first idea was we looked at the website and we knew that it needed to be modernized. But then we really had to think, how can we get people to stay shopping? Because a nice website doesn't mean anything if people don't have any incentive to look at it or have any incentive to shop locally.
Okay, thank you. Super helpful. What in terms of the longevity of this program in a post-COVID world where maybe everything gets back to normal, is this something you'd like to see? And just be brutally honest here. I mean, you're going to have other opportunities. Post-COVID world, you've got a lot of internship opportunities, multiple months of working on something before you go back to school, or of course, full-time. Is this something you'd like to see continue? And if so, would it take a different format for you? Would it be more integrated into the school year? Have you thought about it?
Actually, I would love if this program continued. The first reason is I was just kind of lucky in order to even have internship opportunities as a rising third year, because you most commonly get them 1 year later. I just, I had known some family members who were working at places who were able to get me to the interview. But even then, it still didn't pan out. But I think it's really important because I've always felt like, there's not like a huge rush to get into working, like you should enjoy college. But on the other hand, school ends like May 10th. And that's 3 months of time that should be devoted to at least something productive. Mm-hmm. And Propel fills that void for people who don't have the experience or aren't lucky enough to get into internship programs, but they don't want to do something like, work at a country club or wait tables.
So do you think that this could maybe be more effective for rising third years and for those that are not from UVA, that also means rising juniors?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, so yeah, do you see this as most beneficial in a post-COVID world for that profile?
Absolutely, because I mean, it really more specifically in consulting, because their internship programs are a lot like a training course. So, they're not going to train me this year if I can't go work for them next year. That's a waste of resources for them. Whereas for UVA, it's obviously only beneficial to give, students skills and real world experience.
And how could you imagine that if we have a long-term economic decline, which would mean that a lot of graduates are out of work, as an example, I'm just kind of coming up with this question on the fly here, but would you, in other words, if you were a graduate, if you had just graduated, would you find this program useful?
I still think yes. Actually, my sister, she went to Loyola, Maryland, but she is a class of 2020 graduate. And, she's in the same boat that a lot of people have found themselves in, there's not a whole lot of people, there's a lot of people looking for work and not a lot of people hiring. And she actually, I mentioned like kind of half jokingly, like, oh, I wish I could join this program too, because
good to hear.
But I think, she ended up getting set up with an internship somewhere else. But, it's the same thing. I think it's minimizing, the likelihood that you have to rely on a connection to get a job. You can't just work off your own merit.
Yeah.
In a time like this. But otherwise, I can't really speak too much to the idea of what would happen in a longer
of course.
economic downturn. I just don't know enough.
David, is there anything else you want to share on the program? And then we'll see if anyone has any questions before we wrap up.
No, let's see. I'm trying to think of something, if there's any other questions.
Maybe you can speak to just what you think this looks like next year as an example. Are you continuing this, by the way? Are there ongoing cohorts still happening?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, this is just the first cohort. Carl Carl, you can speak to this if you're part of the other ones. We had students had to register cohort by cohort, meaning that there's 5 different sessions, projects each time. So each time we're getting in anywhere between 120 to 140 students in each session. Students, if they are quick on the draw and they register, they can get into multiple sessions. But we're noticing that some of them, just because students are waiting, we went live with our registration on a Monday. We were filled up, with all of our spots within 3 hours, and had another 70 students on a wait list, shortly, within 2 more hours after that.
I mean, the demand, that's just, for anyone listening, that's absurd demand. And I think that's just speaking to just how important building something like this is.
Yeah, and then that's what, so we're to answer your other question, do we see that we see it continuing. We see that there's a model. We see the companies have been so supportive of this. I'll give one example. Price Waterhouse, one firm, we asked each of our partner companies if you're willing to offer coaches. They reached out to our alums at Price Waterhouse. They came back to us with a list of 27 alums willing to be coaches on the projects.
Unbelievable.
And that's just one. That's the same type of number of most of the organizations. It's just tremendous in terms of the support that if the organizations, that's really what your measure is that is there student demand and is there company support on the other side. When we went to initial our first 2 conversations with McKinsey and Accenture, and they both said, not only will we support this with coaches, we will support it financially. It said something about the program, and we knew we had something there to really build on. So we hope that this continues and has legs, in the post-COVID environment.
Same. Amazing. Does anyone have any questions that you'd like to ask? Just drop it in the chat. Thank you everybody for joining us. Looks like people are probably going to really benefit from this. Michael, thanks for the sentiment. I'm sure that's shared amongst others. Some of the other things that we're working on here, David and I are cooking up this multi-school STEM job fair for, in particular, the class of 2020, and it's, I think, UVA, UPenn, Duke, Tufts, Berkeley, Vanderbilt, NC State, Columbia, I believe. But if there's other schools listening that have an engineering school and would like to participate, obviously let us know. We're going to try to cook up as many things as possible. If you have companies whose recruiters could share, what their hiring process is like, please introduce them to us so that we can build out more and more of that content with our 8-minute webinar series, where it's just a portfolio of content that helps students understand the hiring processes within companies. And if you have any other ideas, let us know at Uncubed. We're super motivated right now to bring as much useful content to the community as possible. I've now begun sending a weekly email to the email list of higher ed folks, just with resources that we're digging up that might be useful to you. But I'd love it, just any of you, if you're thinking what you're struggling with, what you anticipate you're going to struggle with in the fall and next year, that you think if there were resources that could be helpful, let us know, because we're a startup. We're like, we're a 15-person company. We can jump and react to things pretty quickly if there's a need for our particular community, which in this case would be students, hiring companies, and then higher ed professionals. Let us know. David, Carl, thank you both so much. I'm sure I'm missing some probably really great questions here, but I promised I keep it to 45, and now it's been 49 minutes. So, Ms.
Not to
Dilbeer,
run over. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no,
there was
jump
one thing
in.
I'd like a little note card with a couple of things that I had
Yeah,
wanted to
please
say.
do. Yeah, let's not wrap
One
up.
thing I think it's really important is that as students, we're being treated like our opinion really matters here, and that's something that wanted to bring up earlier. But nobody has ever talked down to us. Nobody has made it seem like we're here because UVA is making us here. It really feels like Fluvanna wants us to help, and everyone we've engaged with has just treated us like as a 20-year-old. It's nice sometimes to be treated like an adult, like your opinion matters, and that's something this program does really well.
Yeah, well, a rising UVA junior rebuilt our entire website over one summer, so we we know the value that you all bring for sure. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Carl?
That was pretty much the main thing.
Okay.
Like it's like I said, it was something that I'm sure a lot of younger people really like. It's just okay. Well, now I'm just stumbling over my own words, but it's nice to have real experience, deal with real problems, and be treated like your opinion really matters.
Yep, definitely. I wish we had
that's invaluable experience.
100%. I think the applicational component of learning is something that a lot of schools still have a lot of work to do, and this is applicational learning at its best. And I can see that just from your energy that it meant a lot to you, and it's a great program. And David, thanks for cooking that up. And I think it's worth saying that I think part of your job title is to develop programs like this, right? I don't know if a lot of schools have this, but it probably helps that you are almost tasked with thinking of things this way, right? I mean, if you didn't have the experiential component of your title, do you think this would still fall on you and on your team to lead?
It's one thing that's interesting is you look at the role in employer relations. We've always looked at it a little bit differently, within the way that we operate here at UVA. Part of it has always been to look at it when we engage our companies. We want to engage them in transformative experiences because we feel that if they engage in these transformative experiences with students, the students are going to better understand the work, and the students are going to be better candidates for them, as part of it. So therefore, it really has to be experiential, hands-on, and where they're engaging their mentors and they're truly partners. And if there was one thing I would leave with, it's for everybody on the line, and if you share this, we really base a lot of this, off of this life transforming, experiences, where Gallup did their survey on one of the most important components of a student's experience in their undergraduate education is to have a mentor, to have something that's hands-on, immersive, as part of their educational experience. That's why we do what we do here at UVA. Our former provost was very adamant on the fact of having programs on life transforming, experiences. Laura Del Prado, who's on the line, that's what her title is. She's assistant director for life transforming programs. And these are the key elements, of a project-based learning, environment. So if everybody were to kind of leave in closing is that if you incorporate these components into your program, these design criteria, then you're going to have, a transformative experience, that really is going to engage the students. So what Carl was saying is that you want that student voice, you want reflection, you want critique and revision, you want a final product that is visible. All these types of things, if someone can go through and do, you're learning, you're developing, and you're reflecting at the same time.
Amazing. Thanks for wrapping up with that. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. This has been recorded. I'm going to save the recording, and then we'll get it out in an email so you can share with your colleagues. And if anyone is planning on developing a program like this, just reach out. I can certainly connect you with David and or Carl. Otherwise, if you're developing a program, just share it with us so that just maybe we can share the work that you're doing with others as well. Thanks, everyone, so much. Much appreciated. Carl, David, seriously, thank you for your time. I know both your schedules are quite busy.
Thanks
again.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Carl, good luck tomorrow, buddy.
Yeah, I'd like to add, if there's any questions or emails that people want to send, Drake and David both have my email, so they'll forward it along. I'm happy to answer.
Great, I'll do that. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.